Deion Sanders and Colorado are hoping to crash the college football playoff in 2024, but there's three things that could hold them back. I'm going to tell you why their defense, along with two other aspects of the team, could be the reason they don't make the playoff.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin DeVore, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your podcast, your team, for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever that is, they're free, and we got all the great coverage here over on Locked On for any team, any sport you want. So let's dive into what could prevent Colorado from having their dream season. So a lot of people are talking about Colorado in a very high light. I've seen someone predict them to go 11-1. I've seen certain people predict them to sort of be frisky contenders towards the end of the year. And then I've also seen people say they're going to go sub 500. So I feel like this past year, it's going to be one of those things where we're going to learn as we go, and we're just going to have to enjoy the ride. But I will tell you, this Colorado team is much better than last year's. The offensive line's better. The defensive line should be better. The secondary should be better. And I think the offense is better suited for Shedeur Sanders, which I'll talk about a little bit later, because I think he's due for a breakout year, which may seem unlikely, but I think it's possible still. An even bigger breakout year, we'll put it that way. But what are the three things that could prevent Colorado from making it to the playoffs? So let's imagine that this team is starting off strong, and they start off 4-1, 5-0, and then they upset Kansas State or Arizona. They beat Cincinnati. Next thing you know, they are, we'll call it 7-1, 6-2, because realistically, in the Big 12 and just college football in general these days, it's a 12-team playoff for the college football playoff. Conference winners are automatically in, so you just have to win your conference to get in. That doesn't really discriminate records, so that means eventually, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after, we will have a conference champion who doesn't have like a 10-win season. Like they might have, or they might be like 9-3 or something. And I think people are going to have to just accept that, which is going to be a little weird. But let's just say Colorado's in a good position. What are a couple aspects that could derail them? Well, I look at their schedule and I see North Dakota State. I see UCF, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. 7 of their 12 games are against teams who are going to run the football and will do it well. Colorado was very bad last year in stopping the run. Their defense was bad in general last year. They ranked 127 in total defense, giving up 453 yards per game. They allowed 6.27 yards per play. And while their offense put up a bunch of touchdowns, the offense scored 52 touchdowns. The defense gave up 56. So a lot of issues for that defense. But I would say the bigger weakness of the two between sort of the secondary and the front seven was the front seven and their run defense. If you look at where they ranked last year, 107th in run defense. Colorado gave up over 2,100 yards on the ground, 4.6, almost 7 yards per carry, 24 rushing touchdowns, 176 yards rushing per game. And so let me tell you why it's a concern. Let me tell you how they addressed it, because I do think that they addressed it. But it's still reason for me to be concerned. So one, you have Ollie Gordon, who goes to Oklahoma State. Colorado plays them to finish out the year. Ollie Gordon is the best running back in college football. And nothing can slow him down, not even some off-the-field issues, because apparently the best way to discipline him, according to Mike Gundy, was to give him the ball 50 times. So we'll find out if he actually gets disciplined or not, but I imagine based off those comments he will not. And either way, he would have been fine by the end of the season. So Ollie Gordon was a revelation for the Cowboys last year. He was pretty much their entire offense. Alan Bowman was a very average to mediocre quarterback, and they still made it to the Big 12 title game. So Colorado plays them. Then Taj Brooks, Texas Tech. Colorado plays them 3 weeks earlier after a bye week. They play Cincinnati on October 26th. They have a bye week, and then they go to Lubbock. And Texas Tech is one of those teams where they were expected to sort of be a dark horse playoff contender last year. Like, I'm not even joking to you. There was a lot of chatter around Texas Tech being, oh, they're going to be so good this year. They're going to be a dark horse team. They weren't. I think they stumbled quickly and early. And I think this could be the year where they sort of take that next step, where it's like everyone's doubting them again. But they have Taj Brooks, who he had a very, very good season, 1,500 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. Really solid. Then R.J. Harvey. This is which I'm not just naming random backs. I'm going off a list of rankings. So far, they play the top 3 running backs in the Big 12. They play UCF on the road on September 28th, which is their 3rd road game of their first 5 games. So they are literally on the road for Nebraska, Colorado State. They come home for Baylor, and then they go back to the road, head to UCF. And R.J. Harvey is really good. I think he sort of took the Big 12 by storm this past season. He was all honorable mention for the Big 12. 3rd leading rusher in the conference, 1,400 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 6.3 yards per carry. So if you can't slow him down, things could get tough. They also have to slow down or attempt to slow down Devin Neal of Kansas, who was electric, as always, 1,200 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 6.3 yards per carry, and ran it back for a final year. DJ Giddens from Kansas State, plus Dylan Edwards, a 1-2 punch that Colorado's all too familiar with. Cincinnati has a good running back in Corey Kiner. West Virginia has C.J. Donaldson, who Colorado doesn't have to play them, but it's one of those games where it's like, it's one of those teams where, or it's just a fact where it's like they have really good running backs. And then Arizona State, who's not on the schedule this year, Cameron Scadaboo. But just goes to show Colorado's going to be playing against a lot of the top running backs in the Big 12. So what do they do to address this? Well, they bring in pretty much a whole new defensive line. And I thought, and I said this last year, or at the end of last year, I predicted that they wouldn't return a single starter starter from the offense or defense line. I think I may be close. We'll see. But realistically, I think I'm pretty spot on there, just because Colorado brought in all of this talent, right? And there's a reason you bring in these guys. And there's a reason that you sort of have to rely on, I don't know. I won't say these guys weren't good enough, but there's a reason that you struggled so much. And then there's a reason that you had to bring in so much talent. And so let's talk about some of the guys that Colorado brought in that should help shore up this defensive line in a way that could help them win more games. Because if you can win in the trenches, you can win the game itself. So on the edge, they have Keaton Wade, they have BJ Green, who I think will generate more of a pass rush. They have Samuel Kunalola, they have Deion Hayes, all guys who I think will help get more pressure on the quarterback and should help sort of stop the run. I'm looking at a guy like Anquin Barnes, 6'5", 315 pounds, Alabama transfer, who should have an opportunity to make an impact he was never able to make at Alabama. You got Chidozie Nwankwo, Houston transfer, the block bully, as he's known as. He's only 5'11", 295 pounds, but that dude is tough. He will not let anyone run him over. He will not let anyone push him around. And that's the sort of energy that Colorado needs in order to win games. They have Torian Carter, who played a lot of football at Arkansas. He brings a lot of experience, brings some size at 6'3", 300 pounds. They also brought in, like I mentioned earlier, Deion Hayes from Pitt, a really experienced guy who was going to be a key sort of cog in that Pitt defense and just ended up opting to leave the program. And they have Rand Buell from Ohio, 6'3", 277. Not the biggest, but he's someone who I think could rotate in and make impact. And so you look at all these guys and they're like, and you compare it to last year, where last year they were relying on guys who transferred in from big name schools that hadn't proven anything. This year, they brought in a lot of guys who are proven or at least had seen quality snaps. So I think that could help them slow down the run. But I do think the run defense is one of the bigger concerns. Let's go on to the next concern. You guys comment below. What are your big concerns of this? And maybe we'll align, maybe we won't. But my next biggest concern, linebacker unit, I just don't think they did enough there. I think they made some nice additions. I think realistically, Johnny Chaney Jr. From Florida A&M, and then Nikai Hill Green out of Charlotte. Sorry, I was losing my train of thought there. He's someone who played a lot. He's experienced. I feel like he could sort of establish himself as a leader because of all of his experience. But after that, it's Trevor Woods, it's Levante Bentley, which I think the starters will be Levante and Nakai. And then I think Trevor will rotate in certain packages. But I don't think they have the depth there. I really don't. And so the linebackers, I gave a lot of flack to the defensive line for not being able to stop the run. The linebackers played just as big of a part in not being able to stop the run because a lot of the reason that teams were breaking off big runs and were sort of able to do whatever they wanted against Colorado was because the linebackers weren't filling holes. They weren't blowing plays up. And so are they going to be able to do that this year? I think they brought in some nice pieces. I still think it's a TBD for me. I think we have to see if they're able to improve because obviously if you can't stop the run in the Big 12, teams are going to run it all over you and they will not stop. Excuse me. Let's talk about my third and final concern. This is the coordinators. My third and final concern, both the coordinators that Coach Prime brought in. I'm not doubting the hires. I'm just doubting, are they going to be able to make the impact that this Colorado team needs right away? Because realistically, in the eyes of Colorado, they are a playoff contender. So you have a defensive coordinator who's never coordinated the defense. Now he has NFL experience. He was in the league he coached in the league for over a decade, nearly a baker's dozen. And then you have Pat Shurmur, who was an NFL head coach. Now, I think when you sort of highlight the positives about Pat Shurmur, his best moments, he's curated high-powered offenses that have really just torn up opposing defenses. And then you look at his low moments, his low lights, and it's like, okay, he's had instances where his teams have struggled to run the ball. He's had instances where he didn't develop young quarterbacks very well. So I think for Pat Shurmur to succeed, one, just be balanced, right? Use the run game to your advantage. You have 3, probably 4, if you want to count Charlie Offerdahl, running backs that can make plays. I'm not saying that they're all going to be Ollie Gordon, but Dallin Hayden can make some plays. Isaiah Agustave from Arkansas, he can make some plays. He got some size. Then you have Michael Welch, the freshman. So you have all these guys. Figure out a way to mix them in. Figure out a way to make sure Shedeur stays protected, to figure out a way that he stays healthy, whether that's adding in a running back to block, whether that's having an extra tight end in there, 21 personnel. So that way, excuse me. So that way you have more, you sort of have, or excuse me, not 21 personnel. You got 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. Flip that. But you need an extra blocker is what I'm saying. Or maybe you could have 2 running backs, 1 to block or 1 to just help out Shedeur. Protect him at any cost, right? We don't need Shedeur Sanders taking unnecessary hits. He's a projected first-round pick. For the defense, 1, they need better tackling, which is very simplistic. I know it's not like the hardest hitting analysis there, but Colorado people ran over them, ran by them. I think in the Stanford game, that stands out to me. The TCU game, too, I think Trey Sanders was really tearing up the Colorado defense, where it's like, and UCLA was another one, where you make a few more tackles, you prevent some big plays, maybe the games go different. Discipline-wise, there was a lot of penalties on the defense last year, and I mean, the offense was no exception, but the defense had illegal substitution, defensive holding, unnecessary roughness. They had all these penalties last year. Robert Livingston needs to figure out a way to cut those back and sort of find a way to cut down on all of the preventables, right? You want to prevent things that are preventable and then let the rest of itself play out. If you are sort of not managing the one factor that you can manage, which is all the stuff that you can control, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to succeed. When we come back, I'm going to talk to you about why Shedeur Sanders could be poised for a bigger year, which could help solidify him as the QB1 in the NFL draft. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream of bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And let's just talk about it. We all love free things, and we all love hard-hitting sports analysis, and that's what we do here on Locked On Buffs and at the Locked On Podcast Network. We have every sport, every team imaginable, so go check us out. Let's talk about Shedeur Sanders. He is a projected, we'll call it, I would say in most drafts, I see him around going around number 8, number 5. So he's a projected top 10 pick, right? This was a stat line last year. 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks, QBR of 63.1, completed 69% of his passes, which was slightly under his career high of 70.6. So what can he do to sort of have a breakout year? Why am I talking about a Shedeur Sanders breakout year? Well, I just think the team around him is better. I think the offense that he's playing in is better. And so I think when you add 2 + 2 = 4, and right now we're doing some 2 + 2, let's talk about the offense being better. One, new offensive line. Last year, he was sacked, and this is not an exaggeration. It always feels like an exaggeration when I bring this number up. He was sacked 52 times, which was 58. It was 6 less times, right? Or he was sacked, or I think my math is wrong there. Wow, that was brutal. He was sacked a total of 58 times in his 2 years at Jackson State, which was 6 more times than his 1 year at Colorado. So let's just assume that he's not going to be getting sacked 50 whatever times, right? Let's assume the offense line's better. They bring in around 11 new guys. You got Jordan Seaton, you got Tyler Johnson, Justin Mayers, Khalil Benson, all these guys. What does that mean for Shedeur? Well, more time equals more money, more time equals more money, basically, because the more time Shedeur has to make decisions, the more money throws he's going to make, the more money he's going to make everyone else. That's just how it works out. I think the better the offense line is, the better the passing game is, the better the run game is, the better Shedeur is, because now it opens up the play action. Colorado had no play action game last year because I think if they tried to, defenses would be like, LOL, they think we're going to fall for that. No, everyone knew they weren't running the ball, because why would they run the ball? They weren't good enough to run the ball. So that's one aspect. 2, it's a new offense. Also, wide receiver unit. Oh my goodness. I thought last year's wide receiver, Xavier Weaver, Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, I thought that trio was great. I really did. I thought that was one of the more underrated ones in college football. This year, you have Travis Hunter, you have Jimmy Horn back, that duo. You bring in Will Shepherd. You bring in Omarion Miller, who was a star for one week against USC. Like half the game, he was a star, and then he just disappeared. But he's back. And then you have LeJontay Wester, one of the fastest guys in the country, who could do it all on special teams. He's dynamic after the catch. Shedeur just has to get the ball in the hands of his playmakers, which he will, because he's as accurate as they come. He's as smart as they come. He will, and they're going to make plays. Also, let's talk about the very offense that I kind of criticized a little bit in the first segment. Pat Shurmur, while I do think he has some game management issues, and I do think he really needs to work on establishing the run at Colorado here, his offense is one that Shedeur likes. He says it's more catered to his skill set. He says he's going to be calling the shots, whereas the receivers last year were the ones picking what routes they ran based on the offense and based on what was called. Now it's up to Shedeur and the receivers to be on the same page. And Shedeur's a hell of a communicator. He's a hell of a field general. And so I think that he is poised to have a bigger year. Like, this is like if he threw for 3,200 yards last year, 27 touchdowns, I think this year we're approaching over 4,000 yards, probably 35 tuds. I feel like that feels fair. Interceptions wise, I don't know. Is he going to throw more, less? I'm not sure. I feel like he's really good at protecting the ball. Do I think he may force a couple things now that he's the one calling shots? Maybe. Who knows? Like, is he the victim of fluke plays? Because the Big 12 is very fluky at times, where you get a tip here, a tip ball there, and all of a sudden you just throw an interception. But I do think Shedeur Sanders is poised for a breakout year. Comment below, what do you think his stat line will look at? So give me yards, touchdowns, and then completion percentage. So that way we could compare, contrast in the comment section. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about why Colorado is the perfect fit in the Big 12. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, all of that jazz, because I support you guys. All right, I appreciate you. I do support you guys in all your endeavors, but I appreciate the support that you guys give me. Let's talk about why the Big 12. So you guys will probably see me on a lot of these not Pac-12, a lot of these Big 12, RIP to the Pac-12 though. You'll see me on a lot of these Big 12 podcasts and shows talking about what Colorado brings to the table, sort of why they make sense for the Big 12. And I wanted to make sure that we had a good understanding on Locked On Buffs over here of why Colorado needed to move to the Big 12. And so let's just put it this way. Colorado left the Big 12 for the Pac-12. And at the time, while it didn't make sense to a lot of people geographically and they didn't have any previous history there, the Pac-12 was a conference trending up. There was a point in time where the Pac-12 had an opportunity to add Texas and Oklahoma. Now, they didn't, obviously, because otherwise the Pac-12 would still be very much alive and probably would be like a super conference, but they didn't. And so Colorado joins the Pac-12 at the right time, and then they get there and they run into a few problems. One, they don't have a rival. No one cares about playing Colorado because it's like Oregon's got Oregon State and Washington. Washington has Oregon and Washington State. Washington State has Washington. Cal has Stanford. Stanford has Cal. Stanford has UCLA and USC. USC has UCLA and Oregon. Like every school in the Pac-12, Arizona's, they had each other. Utah, their biggest rival it became USC at the end here. They had BYU as a non-conference rival. But it was just like Colorado was just like, oh, I want to be involved. And everyone's like, no, that's okay. We don't really see you as a fit here. We don't really see you as like you're not one of us. Colorado was never one of us in the Pac-12, right? So they never had a rival. They struggled. The team struggled dramatically where they had like one, maybe two solid seasons. And the rest of the year they were a habitual bottom of the barrel team. And so it's like they just never found their footing in the Pac-12. So now they go back to the Big 12. And the Big 12, it's a new Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma, not there. So there's a sort of up for grabs feeling in terms of like who's going to step up as the face of the conference. Colorado could be that with Deion Sanders at the helm. There's also a sort of the Big 12 has a lot of new teams, right? Like Arizona and Arizona State are still going to be rivals, and Utah has now rekindled their rivalry with BYU. But UCF's new to the conference. They've only been here a year. They need a new rival, right? TCU and Baylor, they have their thing, but maybe TCU and Colorado could form something somewhere down the line. You look at a program like a Kansas State. Obviously, they have Kansas, but maybe they could go toe-to-toe with them. Oklahoma State, I would say Oklahoma was their biggest rival, and they're not going to play anymore. So there's all this new opportunity for Colorado to not only establish himself as a face of the conference, but as a member of the conference, somewhere where they belong, somewhere where they fit in, somewhere where they're not going to be looked down upon. Like I think the Big 12 is a conference that's really competitive, and I think Colorado will offer a lot to the conference, and I think the conference will offer a lot to Colorado. And so it'll be a really fun experience. And I want to make sure you guys are here for every part of that experience. And I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. This has been another great episode of Locked On Buffs. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday, everyone. Be safe, stay cool, and have a great day. This has been Locked On Buffs.